Hello and welcome to the Learning Love Podcast. I'm Dr. Mark A. Hicks, author of the book Learning Love. It is possible to build the healthy, happy, thriving relationships you have always wanted. So let's spend some time learning love. Love is the answer. Now all we have to do is explore all the questions. And today's question is, what about respect? Where does the element of respect come in a conversation about love? Love gets described in a lot of different ways. We need trust. We need compassion. We need affection. It has a lot of different elements to it. Where does respect fit in the conversation about love? I'm going to jump to that conclusion. We're going to nuance it a bit as we go along. But I want to frame this that love and respect are the same thing. If you have one, you have the other. Now, there's ways that you can argue against that. So let me nuance that a little bit. There are ways that you can say, well, I love this person, but I don't respect them. Let me give you an example. Let's say, for instance, there's a person that grew up with an abusive father, and they love that father because that is their father. They feel a bond there. There were things that happened growing up that were good times. They have some good memories, and those good memories really, really feel good. But there was abuse, and that just brings unspeakable heartbreak. And you certainly can't respect a father that abused that child. You couldn't expect that child to respect that father. But it is possible and natural for that child to say, I still love them. I still have an affection. I still feel a bond. I still feel a sense of love for that father, but I absolutely do not respect them. And that is absolutely legitimate. At that point, we're not going to equate the two. Love and respect are not the same thing. You can love without respecting. However, that is a terribly dysfunctional relationship. That's an abusive relationship. And that's the point I want to get to. When we separate the two, when you have love but not respect, we have fallen into dysfunction, fallen into a toxic relationship or even an abusive relationship. These are not healthy relationships. If you love somebody but you don't respect them, that's not a healthy relationship. And so what we want to do is build healthy ones. We want to have healthy relationships. So if you have someone that you say, I love them, but I don't respect them, you have to understand that is not a functional relationship or a healthy relationship. That is horribly dysfunctional. And if you want to continue that relationship, please get help. Okay, don't try to wing that one. Don't try to just go by your instincts with that. Please get some help, because that is vastly complicated and a very difficult situation where people can get really hurt. Okay, if someone is not worthy of your respect, but you still are drawn to them and love them, you're putting yourself in a very difficult position. I'm not saying not to do that. You may choose to be in that relationship, but get help for that. And you may need to set boundaries and say, this is not a relationship I want to be in. I can still love them, but because I can't respect them, I can no longer be in this relationship. That's a valid choice as well, but get help for that. But let's talk about healthy relationships. If it is a healthy relationship, love and respect are the same. You can't separate the two. They are intertwined in a healthy relationship. And very many times, this is where people start to fall down in relationships. They forget the respect part. They love their spouse, but they get into the routines of life. They get into the struggles of life. And they're going to work, and they're coming home and taking care of the kids and getting dinner and cleaning the house, and we're helping the kids with their homework, and there's just all kinds of chores around the house, and then you fall down tired, maybe watch half-hour television before you go to bed. And we get into that routine sometimes, and while we may still have affection, we may still have a love for our spouse, we still have a sense of belonging, so that if they were gone on a trip or something for business, we would miss them, because we have that sense of familiarity and we want them around. But in the midst of all that, it can be really easy to lose the sense of respect, that we have a high regard for that person's feelings, for their opinions, for their ambitions, for what they are doing in life. We have a high regard for that. It is important. Their feelings are important. Their ambitions are important. Their ideas, their boundaries, how they feel about things at any given time is important. That's what respect means, that we give high regard to who they are, what they think, what they're doing, what their boundaries are, everything about them. We hold that in high regard and give them that respect, that adoration. We appreciate and put as important all the things about them. It's easy to lose that one because over the years, people have arguments. And in arguments, it's no longer important what that spouse thinks. It's important what I think. And I need to get my way. And I'm trying to impose my way on their way because I want my way. And you do that on a regular basis in a course of a marriage. Over time, their feelings, their way of thinking, their ambitions, their way of doing things can be put aside because we want our way. Or it may happen to us. Maybe they start winning those arguments. We start giving in. We give in our feelings. We abandon our thoughts. We abandon our ways of doing things. That's no longer important. And we just give in to whatever they think to avoid the fight. At that point, we're losing respect because we're not caring about each other's feelings, thoughts, where we are in life, what our opinions are, where our boundaries are. We're just trying to get our way. And when we get that kind of dynamic, that's a power dynamic. That's who can be in charge. That's who can have power. And I've said before, and I'll say it many more times, you can have power, you can have love, you can't have both. That doesn't work. If we're going to impose our will on someone else, it's not really love because we're not respecting that person. We're not holding their feelings, their thoughts, their ambitions, their boundaries as important. Now, that doesn't mean we always have to agree with that other person. That's where communication comes in. That's where we learn how to talk to each other. We learn how to deal with issues so that what I think is important and what you think is important, and we figure out how those two important things can coexist, even though they may not fit perfectly at first. That's what communication is about. That's what compromise is about. That's what navigating relationships is about, is that, of course, what I think is important, but what my spouse thinks is important too. And when we respect someone, their opinion is just as important as my opinion. When we respect someone, we hold their feelings as a higher regard as we have our own feelings. It doesn't mean we dismiss our own. It doesn't mean that our opinions don't count. It means that while we hold our opinions as important, we hold their opinions as just as important. That's what respect is. And that creates a more complicated navigation than just the power dynamic of somebody winning the argument with their own domineering personality or whatever we may use to win an argument. When we care about the other person in a sense of respect, we care just as much about how they feel and what they're going through and what their opinions are and what their boundaries are as we care about our own. We don't dismiss our own. We don't dismiss theirs. And so now we're navigating a relationship of how can we hold both as important. And if we disagree, how can we find a path forward? How can we communicate through this, find some compromise so that both of us are respected in this process? That's a healthy marriage. That's a healthy relationship. You can apply that same principle. I put it in the context of marriage. You can apply it to every other relationship. When we respect other people, we don't give up our own opinions or our own feelings, but we hold theirs in high regard to the same level of ours. And so we want what is best for them. We want what is best for us. We want their opinions and their feelings to matter just like we do ours. And so we're put in a position of talking through that, finding ways forward when there's disagreements. That's vastly different than a power structure, than a power dynamic of fighting to see who can win. And it's a much healthier relationship. Respect is an absolutely vital part of love if it's a healthy relationship. If you've separated the two, you can talk all day about the affection you have for your spouse, about the attraction you may have for them, about the life you've built together and the love of your life, and you love your home, and you love the things that you've bought together, and you love the trips you take together, and you love the children you've created together, and you love all these things. But if you haven't had respect for that person, held them in high regard, everything about them, their feelings, their opinions, their ambitions, their boundaries, if you're failing to hold them in high regard, then you're loving the life, but you're not really loving them in a healthy way. We're losing the depth of the relationship at that point, and we're making it into what we've created together and the life we have, but not really loving each other in a deep sense, because that requires respect. If we lose the respect, then we're loving on a more dysfunctional level. Then we're getting to a place where we're drifting apart. We're no longer caring about each other's opinions. We've given in, or they've given in to us, because we've long since lost that fight, and we're just now running on routine, and we just do what we did before to avoid the fight. That's not a healthy relationship. If we want a truly healthy relationship, it must have respect. So, how do we go about doing that? If you are thinking right now, I love my spouse, but I'm not sure I've respected them. I'm not sure I really have cared about their feelings to the same level I care about mine. I don't know that I've held their opinions in high regard as I do my own. I'm not sure I've really respected their boundaries. I pretty much have wanted my own way, regardless of what they've wanted. If we start thinking like that and come to that realization, how do we start building back that respect? How do we start showing respect and showing our spouse that we respect them and living that out? Okay, it's not flipping a switch. All right, if we've gotten ourselves into a bad spot, we can work ourselves out. And as I always say, don't be afraid to get help with that. Go to a counselor. They can help you with this stuff. But one of the ways we can start working ourselves out of that jam, if we've sort of lost respect or quit showing respect for our spouse or for a person we're in a relationship with, it goes down to the basics. Start being nice. Start being polite. Start being courteous. Start showing compassion. These have become somewhat foreign ideas in our modern culture. The idea of being courteous and polite and kind and nice, in some circles that may be laughable now. In this world of social media where it can be so cruel and we've lost a bit of civility, many articles have been written about this, many people talk about it. The civil society has sort of been put aside, and we have a much more direct way of speaking, shall we say, and sometimes just an abusive way of speaking, especially on social media. But sometimes that gets into our families too. Sometimes that gets into our way of life when we have a culture around us that is not civil, that is not polite, that is not respectful, that is not kind and nice. When we don't have that around us, it's easy just to sort of fall in to what we see every day, to what we live in as a culture, and forget that there are some basic things to a relationship. We need to simply be polite to the people we care about. We need to be kind, be nice to them. If we do these kind of things, we are showing respect. We are living into a respect for them. Now, if you haven't done that for a while, if you've had a dynamic in your relationship that was more about power and more about winning and more about being strong and making sure you don't lose an argument, that's going to feel really weird at first. It's going to feel really weird. And your spouse, your partner may say, what's wrong with you? When you try to start being nice, what's going on with you lately? It might be met with some suspicion. If you've had a dynamic of arguing and winning and making sure you got your way, and you start showing respect, you start showing kindness, you start being nice, you start being polite and courteous, it's going to feel weird in that relationship. That's okay. Let it feel weird. Do it anyway. Because even if your spouse reacts with some suspicion, be honest. Tell them, I've been thinking, I'm not so sure I've really been as respectful in this relationship as I should be. I love you, and I'm starting to realize that respect is a big part of that. And so I just want to try to do better. That may feel awkward, but your spouse is going to appreciate that, I would imagine. Or if your spouse did that for you, maybe they'll say the same thing. Maybe they'll say, I guess I've been like that too. That kind of conversation could really help. Now, it may not go as easily as I'm illustrating it here. It can be a more awkward conversation. That's okay. Have that conversation and start saying, let's start showing some more respect for each other. Let's start being polite again. What are we doing with all this stuff? Let's be polite. Let's be courteous. And let's start building back some respect. We love each other. Let's make respect a big part of that. If you do that kind of thing and you're honest and upfront and you practice that, you practice those basics of courtesy and politeness and kindness, That's going to take you a long way to really developing that respect, that you truly do care about their opinions and feelings in the same high regard that you show your own. And when you do that for each other, that is a healthy, thriving relationship that everyone can enjoy, that problems can be worked out without fighting, without a lot of arguing, without power dynamics, that you find solutions because both people's opinions are important. And so you respect each other enough to talk that out. That's a relationship that can really be a beautiful, thriving relationship. And it all comes back to respect. If you love someone but don't respect them, that is a dysfunctional relationship. If you want a healthy, thriving, functional relationship, make sure respect is the equivalent of love. Love and respect go together in a healthy relationship. And so that's my thoughts today on helping you build the kind of relationships that you really do deserve in your life. As always, I hope you'll go to my website, markahicks.com. There's a link there that will lead to my book, Learning Love, Building a Life That Matters, and Healthy Relationships That Last. This is what I want for you, a life that matters and healthy relationships that last. Get my book. It'll help you find that in life. I want to thank my producer, Abby Graves of Abby Graves Production, and I want to thank all of you for listening today. Until next week, love well, everyone.